Welcome to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast, where we hear stories from fellow seamstresses just like you. We're able to share their success stories. We learn from wedding industry pros for the best business tips, and we get to hear from fellow sewists and crafters to hopefully inspire our creativity and our love for sewing. I'm so glad that you're here. And if you're a bridal seamstress, I'd also like to invite you to check out our Bridal Seamstress Business Membership. We have a community of women that can testify to the power of genuine connection, friendship, vulnerability, the power of our six-figure seamstress method, and a genuine connection found in a business mentorship like this. All right, let's dive into the episode. Welcome back to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest. We have Adrienna McDermott. She is the owner of Ava and the Bee. If you are following the wedding industry niche on Instagram, I'm sure you're following this woman. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to marketing. And as bridal seamstresses, we could never get enough help with marketing. And today's topic is going to be so helpful. You're going to be able to use it like literally this week. So thank you so much for being here and making time for us. I know you're like a very busy woman. So thanks for carving out time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really love this topic too, because I think a lot of times we assume that every couple is the same and every buyer
Yes.
is the same, and
Mm-hmm.
they are not at all. And once you
Right.
recognize who they are and how they make decisions, it makes those red flags go away. We always see red flags, and I'm like, it's not a red flag. It's just how they make a decision. Not bad.
I love it. And we can see like, okay, every dress is the same. You know, we think about like the skills that we use to fit the gown as pretty straightforward. And we forget that we're working with humans who have individual personalities. And I love that you have categorized them so we can sense some patterns before we're stuck in a situation we don't want to be in. But before we dive into that, tell us how you got into the wedding industry. I feel like wedding industry pros, we all kind of end up here. It's not like our original plan. You know what I'm saying? So tell me how you ended up here.
I drank the Kool-Aid young and never looked back, is what I tell people. So I got started making accessories actually in high school. I had like my own accessory like Etsy shop. I actually went to college for millinery initially to be a hat maker. And so I just kind of got started in the wedding industry young and really liked it. And then throughout college, I worked at David's Bridal and then a private boutique and then back to David's Bridal. Working in retail, I just realized how much I loved bridal retail. I loved sales. I loved people. I loved fabric. So my final degree was actually in textile design. And initially my thought was, yeah, this is my background. I was like, I'm going to work for a gown designer in the fabric department and doing embellishments and like, so that's what I thought I was going to be when I grew up, right? I was like, I'm going to work in bridal, work for a gown designer or something. And then I ended up instead, my senior year of college, meeting another girl and she was a planner. And so we were like, let's just open a bridal shop because that's what you do when you're young. You're like, what's more debt? Let's go. So we got a business loan. About 2 weeks after we got our business loan, we were literally at market in New York City in October doing the market thing. We didn't even have like a storefront outlined. We were just like, let's buy stuff. So long story short, we opened a wedding planning florist and bridal boutique company early 2014 when we officially opened doors. And we did that for a while. So definitely my love and passion was always retail sales. Obviously, we had in-house alterations. We actually brought over a seamstress that we had known at David's Bridal. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
took her out of there.
Little poaching.
It
That's
was like,
fine. Yeah, we won't
yeah, we
tell.
were like, we slightly poached her. And then I sold that. I sold my half in 2017 and I started doing marketing just for everybody, including I went to Bridal Fashion Week a handful of times with designers, which was
Mm-hmm.
cool, was to start seeing the other side of it, was working with gown designers and seeing how they worked and everything. And so I kind of got into that. And then my company was just born because I had a bunch of friends who paid me money. And to this day, most of them are still my clients. And so I've been doing this marketing side since 2018.
Wow, what a journey. You just probably gained so much wisdom with each of those steps, starting with just like selling the gowns. Like you learned so much about like body language and nuances of brides that you could take with you in the next like business endeavor. And then like, oh my gosh, starting the business from the ground up and then just like diving into market. Like, yeah, wow. Okay, so you come fully loaded here. Very excited.
Yes. And one of the reasons I love buyer types too is I talk about this a lot when I speak, but I, had to pay for a very expensive art school working retail, making $7.50 an hour on commissions. Like if I'm buying art supplies, thousands of dollars a month, like that is literally me on the ground of a bridal shop. And so I had to learn literally to make money to afford food, how to sell. And so I
Yeah.
think that's why I always love the idea of understanding who they are, because so many times people would be like, oh, that client was so annoying. And I'm like, I don't think anyone's annoying. I just think we haven't figured out who they are yet. I mean, some people are really
Mm.
annoying, but like 95% of the time when someone say a client's a red flag, they're not. They just don't understand how to talk to them yet.
Well, let's dive in. Tell us how potential clients are different and they're not all the same annoying bride. I love how you said it. Some
Yes.
people are annoying, but most people aren't. Within our membership, we talk a lot about, if you have like a negative client experience, this is a safe place to talk through it. And so many times the experience really doesn't come down to us. I mean, sometimes it does, and it's important to own up to mistakes that happen. But a lot of times it's what they walk in the door already holding or what stressors are already on their mind. And so I love what you're going to dive into, which is more of just like the personality that gets the train rolling before we even get to the stress. It's just like, who are they and what are they looking for?
Everyone wants to be seen and heard, especially when we're
Mm-hmm.
doing something as emotional as wedding attire and gowns. That is one of the most emotional purchases they're going to make. It is not a joke. They cry every time. If you are literally dealing with one of the few times of their wedding experience that they hopefully cry, like hopefully they are literally only crying at like 3 moments: buying the attire, seeing it done, and on their wedding day. So
Yes.
when you're one of the three most emotional parts, they just want to be seen and heard. And so the way we're going to break it down today is through a very common marketing method, which is called the DISC. DISC. The reason I'm saying the method is because it's not a trade secret. It's just understanding how each works. So if you're someone who listens to this episode and you're like, oh, tell me more, just Google it and you'll have hundreds of book recommendations. And
Perfect.
it's literally just a general marketing tactic. But how we're going to break it down today is for each buyer type, and we're going to color code them, because if you're like me, you need a color. We're going to be breaking down what they sound like, why they feel like a red flag, how we work with them, scripts to use, and then what to post for marketing for each one. So hopefully by the end of the day, you'll hear this. And my biggest tip is I'm about to throw a bit of info at you. So, my biggest suggestion is for each person I talk about, I want you to have in the back of your mind a past client you've worked with and just associate that name with them, because you're
Ooh,
always
that's
going to go
great.
back to this. Yeah, so you're going to hear this stuff, and within a minute of me talking about each type, you're going to go, oh, that was so and so. Perfect.
Love it. Love it.
And that's how we do it in my own agency is we know every client's buyer type, so that way we know, okay, that is them. Buyer type number one is the D in the disc. They're red because they come off as the biggest red flags to wedding vendors, not to other industries, but only in the wedding industry is this buyer considered a red flag. So these are the people that are fast, decisive, direct, results and efficiency focused, very timeline focused, and they want clear, structured pricing. I know you've already thought of someone
Yeah.
immediately.
I'm like, oh, yes.
They're going to say stuff like, well, can you fix this? They're fixers, right? When will it be done? They don't like open ended. What's the cost? They don't want fluff, which is why they come off of a red flag. And the reason this is going to drain you as a seamstress is you're going to feel rushed or bulldozed pretty early on. They're the ones that are going to come in with slightly stronger energy. I love selling to these people, guys, because they spend fast once they trust your competence. They will
Bring on the red.
outspend any other buyer any day. This is why I think it's so funny that everyone's like, meh, to these buyers. They spend the most money once they trust you. They are the client that says, yep, whatever you say. Yep, do my whole bridal party. Yep, do all of this. Yeah, sure, whatever. Like they will trust you, but they come off a little harsh because they don't trust you yet. Here's the biggest thing. They're going to come in and ask about timeline and cost. And you guys are always going to think it's a red flag. And to me, that is the opposite. Opposite. That is the biggest green flag because that means they are in a decision ready phase. They are ready to upgrade. They are valuing the outcome over savings. So the minute they come with
Hmm.
timeline and cost, we see red flags. I see, yep, they're ready. They're ready to purchase. They're ready for me to step into my leader. So here's how we're going to handle them: confidence, brief. We're not going to go into a story. We're not going to really even ask them that many stories about themselves. They're not going to talk about themselves standing there. They're literally going to be like, can you do this or not? You're going to want to give timelines and you're going to want to over explain a little bit without making them feel dumb, but they're the kind of person where you're going to want to be like, okay, so it's going to be 2 weeks for this. You're going to come in here. Like they want to see the process ahead of time. And I understand that alterations sometimes we can have open-endedness. We need to make it seem as unopen-ended as
Yeah,
possible with them. Because again, if they want to spend more money, they need to know when to spend it, right? They're not going to want to be
love it.
like, well, when do I figure this out later? So, for example, when they're standing there, you're going to say things like, okay, so we are going to do XYZ. Take in the bodice here, hem the train. You're going to see it again on Main 4th. The total investment is this. Like they want clear to the point at the very end of the consultation. You
Hmm.
always want to summarize what you just did and what is coming next. They don't ever want to be surprised.
Okay, I think that some listeners, these interactions happen like via email. So how could you
Yep.
tweak that for like email? I still recognize those not red flags, but those signs of the red person in emails. I use Dipsados. Everything is pretty automated. So what can I do without spending so much more time on emails to help this individual?
Yeah, so this is the one where with your marketing and your communication, you're going to want to definitely make sure you have some kind of general timeline structure. The average
Hmm.
project is on average this long. Because as a shop owner, I needed to know on average how long my seamstresses took before I sent them. You're also going to want to be someone who maybe includes in the footer of every email a testimonial that talks about some kind of transformation. So, like a two sentence at the end of every email, like in the footer, just like XYZ was amazing. They took it from a size 16 to an 8 or something. I don't know,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
something that is just
Yeah.
like, oh, that was really hard and they made it easy. You're definitely going to want to focus on that and just, again, lean into slightly shorter communication. And this is with all buyer types. I'm sure you've seen this. The longer the emails these days, the least likely anyone is to read
Yes.
them. So
Yes.
they benefit from short to the point emails as well, for sure.
Okay. Love it. Taking notes. Thank you.
Yes,
This I'm
yes.
already so pumped. You're only on like D on the red.
Exactly. It's so fun. So let's talk about your marketing for this person. This is where you're going to want some good before and after photos. I know that's one of the hardest things for us to get. I totally understand, but they're the ones that do like to see some kind of before and after. Any kind of honestly quick turnaround. Again, they want to know that you can work under pressure. And
Hmm.
so if you've had to do quick turnarounds, those can be shared. Any kind of tutorial, like this is how we fix something, they tend to like because again, it shows your expertise. So if you
Hmm.
are on video a lot, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, like if reels and video is a strategy, even tutorials of like, here's how we fix this. Like I follow someone on TikTok who's a seamstress and that's like all she posts. And I'm not even this buyer. And I'm like, oh, look at her take that dress in. Like I know how this
Hmm.
works. And yet I am sitting here watching hours of this TikTok. And you better bet if I ever know anyone in her city, she's who I'm going to recommend,
Hmm.
even though I don't know her. So this is what we're going to talk about. And then anytime you have captions, always make sure occasionally talk about timelines. Like this client had a 6 week process. That just kind of helps them because they don't want inspiration. They just want proof.
That's
So
good.
that's our D buyer. Our I buyer, they are yellow. These are our influencer couples. So this is the buyer
Oh,
who is, I know this is a good one. This is the person who is excited, emotional, and very vision driven. They're going to
okay.
use expressions in their emails or in the consultations like, I want to feel amazing. This is
Hmm.
my dream dress. They are the one that wants to bring lots of people. This is where the red flags in. They're the ones who can't shop alone, do anything alone. They will bring in mom, sister, best friend, cousin, aunt, and dog because that's just who they are.
They're in their
They
bridal
also,
era. They're gonna soak it up.
these are the ones that own that so hard, it's a little much. They like long emails, emojis. They're going to use a lot of words about vibes and feelings, right?
I feel like that's like me.
When we get to my buyer, people who know me in real life, once they hear my buyer type, are like, oh, yeah, this tracks everything about you. I'm like, yeah, I know. So the I buyer is energetic. Sometimes they seem like too much energy, like in an email, because they might just be like, they have too many opinions. They need a lot of reassurance. They're kind of like little puppy dog energy, like, let's go. This is so exciting. Best day of my life. So they come off a little intense sometimes. And the biggest thing is they spend for experience. They spend because they care about how I feel. So
Hmm.
they're ones that sometimes can be a lot if you're more introverted, is what I say. Is like if you're an introvert, you see these people and you're like, that was a lot of thoughts. And I don't have that many, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
So while it might seem kind of like a red flag when they bring 47 people or want to bring them, the green flags is they will become your hype person. They are the ones that will record a video if you want them to, record a testimonial. Like they're the ones that after, if they're happy, will give you all the testimonials and hype. They will refer you more than any of their buyer type. They will out refer. So they come in a little strong, but they are loyal. High emotion means they're high advocacy potential, right? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I just want to talk about you. So they're definitely a really good one for that. Definitely when we're working with them, like especially going back to like the email thing, I definitely think that's where a testimonial shines for really all of them. But making sure if you have maybe a 5 email sequence, one of the testimonials is focused more on that feeling, like the vibes, like
Mm-hmm.
this was my dream gown, or this buyer and the sentimental steady buyer are more likely to have like a family heirloom. Like
Yeah.
these two are the type of buyers where they're the like, I need to have my grandma's dress, veil, mom, something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
anytime you can talk about that in your marketing, your email can be really cool because they're going to lean into that. We also want to mirror their excitement, but then still have structure. Sometimes they're the ones that tend to let us get off track. Their appointments tend to take the longest, their emails are the longest. So it's up to us to kind of guide them and be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I know we're excited. I know you have 47 ideas for your dress. Let's talk about what is possible, right? Like
Yeah.
they sometimes we need to like just hone them in a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
So for example, like being excited, being like, I love what you're looking for. Let's like go ahead and show you what it's going to look like. Let's pin it in place. They need a lot
Mm-hmm.
of reassurances before logic. Like they don't really need to
Yeah.
know how you're going to do anything. Like the dominant buyer wants to know how you're going to do it. This buyer's like, I don't care as long as I look pretty. So
Yeah. Yes.
he's
I'm
going into
feeling
it
more
knowing
and
that.
more related to this buyer the more you keep talking. So I'm like, yeah. I'm like, they're not overwhelming. They're the fun ones. What?
Exactly. No, they're the life of the party. They have a content creator at their wedding. They have a band at their wedding. They have a big party. Like, this is all about fun for them. So, when it comes to social and just communication, any kind of reaction you can get at a final fitting is gold because they're going to want to be on video, probably. Obviously, ask for consent, but they're the most likely to be like, oh my
Right.
God, yes. Yes, take a picture. Mirror twirls, anything that shows movement, they're like, oh, movement, like, oh my God, obsessed emotion, any kind of transformational, and any kind of caption. So, a caption that I would love is like, this gown didn't just need a hem, it needed to feel like the dress was finally hers based off
Mm-hmm.
of emotion.
What I'm thinking about is how I want to make sure that my socials attract each of these buyers and not just who I associate myself with. Although it's like, I do like the idea of just attracting the people I want in my space. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's definitely
I
a
know that,
mix.
yes, but just being a little more intentional to, attract each personality type, not just who I'd want as like my friend.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to associate these people either with a color or a past client. So whenever you're doing your marketing, I mean, this is what we do for our own clients, is we'll make sure we touch on all four throughout the month, right? We'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this caption or this blog or this whatever piece of marketing is more for this one buyer. It's more for the
Yeah.
yellow. We want to talk to the yellow twice a month because, they might not be our main buyer, but they're still out there. So it's just kind of knowing like, okay, if I have 15 posts in a month, I want at least two to go to each kind, just so you kind of
Mm-hmm.
have a general like touching of all of them.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so far, I
So,
mean, I prefer the yellow over the red. Let's see what else you got.
okay, well, the next one is me, the steady buyer. This is the green. They are pretty, a little bit more introverted usually, gentle, loyal, conflict avoidant, which is their red flag.
Oh, that's also me. Okay, interesting. I can already predict like this is the bride who is like something isn't quite fitting right, but she won't say anything. So you have to like read between the lines to be like, she keeps
Yes.
touching that strap. So it must be tight, even though she's not gonna tell me it's too tight. You know what I'm saying?
I literally have this written down. They're going to say things like, well, whatever you think looks good, or I
Yeah.
don't want to be a bother. Or I have literally in my notes, they're going to stand there kind of awkwardly, touching
Yes.
something over and over again.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. As seamstresses, we know that is the signal because if they're nonverbal, they're just gonna stare at one spot in the mirror, or they'll be tugging at something or trying to like force a bead to lay a different way. I had a bride that did that last year and was like, it's fine. But she wanted them to be facing a similar direction. So I'm like, okay. But yes, looking
Yes.
for the clues.
Yes, they're going to smile, but most likely to leave worried, but never show it. So that's why they are a little hard, is because they will just say, like, kind of in. They're the ones that sometimes have a little bit of that last minute anxiety because, like you mentioned, they never voiced the concern any earlier. So
Yeah.
they're the ones that you're like, are they gonna be happy? So because they're a little conflict avoidant, can actually be kind of hard because we're having to coax a bit more out of them. So
Yeah.
the biggest thing though with them is they are, like the influencer, deeply loyal. They will refer you.
Mm-hmm.
They won't just leave you a 2 sentence review, they'll leave you a novel. Like they will really go out of their way for you and your business once they feel safe. So the biggest thing is really focusing on inviting feedback and reassurance because they don't want drama, they just want you to be steady. So, for example, like in an email sequence, they're the ones where you're going to want to mention at some point, feedback is an essential part of this process. Telling them that feedback is
Oh, that's a
required,
great line.
and I use it with my clients all the time because when we're doing something like copywriting, that's where they leave the least amount of opinions because it's voice and they get nervous. And I literally say in my recording when I send a copy project, please leave feedback. It is
Mm-hmm.
encouraged, it is expected. I know you will have feedback. So when you lead into someone, like me as a buyer, when someone's like, we're going to have a second fitting for this reason, this is how it works, I
Mm-hmm.
will then go, oh, okay. So like I'm allowed to say something. So just make sure we're putting
Yes.
in that, yes, it's not a one and done, especially for something this complex. Invite them to give feedback and they will, but you have to ask for the feedback. They're not going to ever give it willingly.
Mm-hmm. Feedback is an important part of this process. That is a great line. Yeah.
Yes. So definitely how to handle is asking those direct questions and giving that permission to speak up. So for example, saying something like, "Hey, if something doesn't feel right, I just need you to tell me. That's why I'm here." Right? Like remind them why they're there because a lot of them probably are there because they feel like this has to happen and they don't know what else to do. So they're like, "What do I do with my hands?" So they just need some
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
safety.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that is so good. Okay. And then how do we help them again, like via email or just when we're interacting online with them before we see them face to face?
Yes. So definitely they're the ones where we're going to want to talk a lot about the process and experience, right? So
Okay.
social media, we're going to talk about what to expect at your first fitting because they will be the one that reads that blog post and that social media post and has it saved and probably sends it to their mom. That's me. Hi. For example, I dropped my dog off at daycare the other day and I didn't understand exactly what the process was. And I was like, do I call? Do I ask? Like, they get nervous because they just want to know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So tell them what to do and make it very obvious.
I'm so glad that this is you because I'll picture you with that. I think there are a couple brides because when you said the long-winded review, yes, one is coming to mind. She had a lot of questions. Honestly, she left and I was like, I hope that went well. I think it went well. And then she left like the most beautiful review and I need to like post about it actually. So I guess she fits in that category, but it's nice to have your face with that. So I'll think of you and now I'll know how to respond with very compassionate information.
Yes. So behind the scenes, educational pieces. So
Mm-hmm.
this is really great if you have any kind of blogging or writing strategy to have that maybe in one of your emails like, hey, you're going to ask about what to expect on your first fitting. Here is a link to my long post that talks about everything you need to know about your first fitting, who to bring, how
Mm-hmm.
it works, what's the payment. Like they just want to know everything. And so if you can give them that info, they're a much easier sell because they're probably going to read all of that info before they pick a final person too. They're most
Mm-hmm.
likely to
Interesting.
pick the vendor or person who gave them the most clear process. Like I will only hire or spend money if it's clear. If it's not,
Mm-hmm.
nope, out the door. Don't care.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just thinking about the like wedding vendors in my area, and I can almost peg who they mostly attract based on how they post.
100%. So we do this method with every client. We go through everything. We map out who they are because I'm writing specifically very different. And if I'm writing to this type of client, a lot of photographers who do the candid, more documentary style photographers, always up this alley. The planners who do more like outdoorsy elopement always tend to be this type of
Mm-hmm.
client. So definitely you'll naturally cater without even realizing it.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, this is fascinating. Love it.
Last is our conscientious buyer. So,
Okay.
blue, detail oriented analytical checklist. They probably came in with a checklist next to a checklist and then had one on their phone as a backup in case they
Mm-hmm.
lost that other one. So, they're the ones that's going to ask questions like, can you explain how a bustle works? lot of people won't ever ask that question, but they're going to be the ones who are like, can you explain it and then show everybody who I've ever known how this works and record a
Yeah.
video? And then can you write it down and do a diagram, please?
Yeah.
They're going to ask like detailed questions like, how many layers are in my dress like that you need to
Mm-hmm.
hem? Because they're going to mathematically start to go, okay. They want the breakdowns. So you'll kind of see it's like kind of a circle. Like definitely everyone has stuff that overlaps, but
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have a kind of a lot of questions. So they sometimes are a little tiring if you're more introverted because they're going to ask, and you might think that they're doubting your ability. They're
Oh,
not.
yes. Yeah. Okay.
They're the ones that clients are always like, oh, but they just don't trust me. I'm like, they have not proved that they don't trust you. Asking questions does not mean they don't trust you. Asking questions is actually a strong buyer signal because if they didn't have questions, they wouldn't care enough to ask you, means you're not in the running. Questions are always good. I tell people this all the time. I would rather have 87 questions than zero because 87 questions means they're probably going to buy from me. Zero means I'll never see them again. So it's never a bad thing. Once they're feeling good about something, they'll relax. And the best part is these are the people who never ask for discounts because, again, they trust you. They understand logic. They understand how things work. They tend to be in slightly more analytical fields that are never discounted. They're not going to be the one that's like asking for a discount. Influence buyers, unfortunately, are going to ask for a discount usually. They just need some
I
clarity.
have never, even though I identified myself with that. It's like, let's get that clear. Okay.
I mean, we're not all, yeah. I mean, hey, and a C buyer might ask for a discount too, but they're just less likely to
Yeah.
ask out of,
Mm-hmm.
they're just kind of like, no, I don't need this. They definitely need the clarity. And once they've gone their initial questions, the rest of working with them is going to be a breeze because they probably won't have any more after that. They tend to front load
Mm-hmm.
and then they're like, oh, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But they'll just front load a little heavier than some other buyers who spread it out. They'll just throw it
Mm-hmm.
all at you at the very beginning in those first few emails. And then after that,
Gotcha.
they're cool. So
Okay.
definitely one to answer a lot of their questions in the emails. Like I would literally go question by question individually. Don't make a giant paragraph. That's too hard. Have it literally
Mm-hmm.
be like this is what I do for my clients. When they ask like 17 questions, I'm like, this is their buyer. Okay. Question one, period. Answer. Question two,
Mm-hmm.
period, answer. Because that's how their brain is going to want to focus is
Or
linear.
like an FAQ page.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
FAQ, process, precision. So when you're working with them, just always making sure you're talking them through. We're shortening this by 1 inch, this by 1.5 inches. Everything will be documented. Do not worry. And they're like, oh, okay, cool.
Oh, that's great. And I think the biggest takeaway of that is don't get defensive. I've worked with a lot of seamstresses, and some of them can be so defensive to protect their work, or like if you question anything, it's because, you don't trust me and I don't want to work with you then if you don't trust me, or that's what starts the fight or like the dissatisfied client because of
Yes.
those reactions. So just knowing that like wanting to understand things doesn't mean they're coming at you, and that's no reason to feel defensive about anything. That is a great reminder.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something we see with so many vendors. And I know working from that end of working with artists, like I went to art school, I work heavily with artists, and we tend to take things really personal. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we have to step out and again be like, this is not personal. They are spending a lot of money on an emotional purchase that they hopefully only do once. It would be weird if they didn't come in with that energy. I'm
Yeah.
more weary about clients who aren't nervous than I am sometimes because we have all worked with a client who seemed so easygoing till the end, and it's because they weren't easygoing. They just didn't realize how hard this was. So I
Right.
just am very much like most of the time they're not the red flags. We think they are. They just need to be handheld in a slightly different variation.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do we do this week? I feel like this is an episode that people will probably listen to more than once because, you listen to it driving and then you got to come back and like take some notes about it because it'll affect how you interact with clients, how you structure your social media posts, how you structure your blogs, even just like your website copy, wanting to make sure that you kind of hit every client in how you describe your services. So, what are some actionable steps listeners could take this week to review the current copy that they have on all platforms? Or even assess their in-person interactions.
So, first things first is make sure you know which type of client and you have that person in your mind because this makes everything else easier. So, when you re listen
Mm.
to it, definitely make sure, like, hey, this is Samantha, this is Lexi, like, just have it. Just have the four people in mind. Honestly, like my biggest tip for quickness is throw like your homepage into ChatGPT. This is one of the few reasons I would ever recommend AI is because I don't think you should write the copy, but it can certainly tell you what's wrong with it. So throwing it into
Mm.
a platform like that and saying, hey, based off the disc method, am I targeting all four or am I leaning really heavy in one direction? And it will tell you. And it will literally be like,
Wow.
yeah, like you are leaning so heavy on the I, and you're like, but I don't want the I. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, you
Hmm.
might be truly marketing to just the wrong audience. Although, as we mentioned, all four are equal great value people. But I also understand naturally tending
You're
to
right.
slightly want to have more. But definitely throw like your homepage copy into it or throw your email sequence into chat and say, based off the disc method, where am I at? Because that is going to be
Hmm.
the fastest way for the robot will actually be really smart because the robot understands disc and will be like, okay, you're leaning really heavy on I and you're not talking at all to D, but half your clients are D's. Another tip is if you're like, well, I don't actually know what I have, I'm still confused, Adriana, throw your most recent 10 to 15 testimonials into Chatty. You tell Chatty, read these testimonials and tell me what my disc buyer is. There you go. It takes about 30 seconds.
Oh, I cannot wait. Okay, that is awesome because those are the ones that I want to see more of anyway.
100%. Your
You know what I'm
testimonials are the
saying?
people we want to rebook. And this is something that we did. I mean, I've been doing this for the last 15 years, that exact method. But I used
Hmm.
to color code, I used to print out clients' reviews and color code it. And the fact that now I can just ask Chatty to do it is the best thing. It literally saves me hours every strategy session because that's one of the few things we automate in our business is I throw the
Hmm.
testimonials in and then I'm like, sweet, that's all I need to know.
My husband and I were at dinner at a friend's house last night, and the hosts were talking about AI and how to use it equitably and not use it as original content creation or whatever. And they're in a
Yes.
completely different business than I am in. And so I was talking about how I use it. And it's like, for this purpose, when you're starting with your own original words and just using it to like analyze or to just give you data that would take you forever to do on your own, it's like, why wouldn't you do that? You know, like I think they had like a fear of cheating or something. And I'm like, okay, but that's not cheating. It's like just being smart about the tools at hand. And that is a great way to use it. I love both of those ideas. Okay, so listeners, that's your homework this week. Everybody can do that. Wow,
Yes.
I'm so excited. Okay, so then final little nugget, tell us a couple ways that we will see like benefits in our business by implementing that. How is life going to be easier?
For every single client, what I recommend is once you understand this method, immediately knowing this is this kind of buyer, because then you can figure out the rest of your process, right? Then you can figure out this client will need more communication, less communication, more images, more whatever. That
Mm-hmm.
helps you understand the sales cycle better. So when you're in those initial few emails, you can decide, okay, do I need to edit anything? Can it just be automated? Can I reach out? Maybe if they're more influenced, I should probably reach out on Instagram because they're never going to open their inbox. Like it helps you understand how they're going to make their decision picking you. You will understand whether or not they're going to pick you. Like whenever we get inquiries, I try to figure out kind of roughly what I think their buyer type might be based off the inquiry using the keywords that they use. And then I go, okay, this one's going to need more of this. I'm going to do that. And it just helps close the sale because I'm not going into it blindly. I'm understanding
Mm-hmm.
if it's a no, why it's a no. And then it's also going to help you understand your marketing to attract them. And personally, I have found, and most of my clients have found, that once they know the four people they're talking to, it's easier to market because you're literally just talking to those four friends. Just think of them as friends, and you're just talking to those four friends. And that's it. Like, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about thinking about anybody else. Just talk to those four friends over and over again because that is essentially who we're marketing to. There's four people.
Wow. Okay, thank you. I'm so excited. I can't wait for our listeners to hear this because I mean, it does simplify things so much. And it's not like there's billions of people in the world and how do we talk to all of them? It's like you've really broken it down to four. And I've never heard of the disc method ever.
This is the book that I read, I don't know, like a decade ago and was like, oh, I get it now. It's called Surrounded by Idiots. It's about this and it's color coded. I use the colors that they use in the book because most
Hmm.
type it as some kind. I just go ahead and I keep the colors the same because they make the most sense to me too. Like the green, I'm
Hmm.
like, that feels green. That's on
Yeah.
vibe. So,
And like yellow and red. Oh my gosh, 100%. Yes. That's
yeah.
so funny. Okay, tell listeners where we can find you, what services you provide. Like you do so much for wedding pros, and I want to make sure that our listeners know what they can get you to help them with and where to find you.
Yeah, so over at Even the Bee, our main focus to help you stand out so there's no competition. That's my goal is that you stand out and you don't need to worry about competitors. So we do that through a variety of things, including website, branding, copywriting, SEO strategy. obviously with the disc method in mind for every single
Yeah.
project. But we also do monthly marketing like blogging, Pinterest, newsletter. So if you have some kind of newsletter, email funnels, we do all of that. We can help you with all of those things. And you can come find us at avaandthebee.com, or honestly, just DM me at avaandthebee. I am in the DMs 24/7. So
Yeah, you are great with that. Yes. Yay. Okay. I cannot wait to get this information out to listeners. Thank you so much. And yeah, now we're going to stop recording and now we're going to talk about how to get her to one of our FPS retreats, because that's on my to-do list next. All right. Thanks everyone. We'll see you again next week.